Donald Trump's personal net worth has gone from roughly $2.3 billion the day before he won re-election to somewhere north of $6 billion as of last week. That's not appreciation, that's a near tripling of one man's wealth in approximately 16 months. And according to a forensic accounting published by Forbes and corroborated by Steve Ratner's analysis citing Bloomberg, approximately $3 billion of that delta traces directly to one single source: cryptocurrency. But here's the part the headlines have almost entirely missed. The Department of Justice is now quietly probing at least $2.6 billion in suspiciously timed oil futures trades, with Reuters extending the broader pattern as high as $7 billion. The Trump family's own crypto firm just sued one of its largest investors in two separate jurisdictions, and to make matters worse, on May 6th, during consensus in Miami, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand has drawn a line in the sand on the most important crypto bill in American history until lawmakers ban the exact arrangement the Trump family is using. My name is DC and you're watching The Coin Bureau. Today we'll walk you through exactly what the SEC filings reveal about the Trump family's crypto enrichment, why the Justin Sun lawsuits are the actual legal nuclear options for the entire WLFI structure, and how the Clarity Act fight has now become the single largest political risk to every token sitting in your portfolio. Now, before we get into any of this, you need a quick map of the terrain because the structure here is deliberately complex. World Liberty Financial, or WLFI, is a DeFi lending and stablecoin protocol launched in late 2024. The controlling vehicle is an entity called DT Marks DeFi LLC, which is owned approximately 70% by Donald Trump and 30% by his immediate family. The bylaws of WLFI mandate that 75% of net protocol revenues and token sale proceeds flow directly back to that single LLC. Sitting alongside WLFI is the Trump Memecoin, issued through two separate Trump-affiliated entities called Fight LLC and CIC Digital LLC. And besides them, there is also the American Bitcoin Corp, the publicly traded mining vehicle Eric Trump took public via a HUT-8 reverse merger in September 2025. And this brings us directly to the $5 billion number nobody in mainstream financial media will say out loud. Per Forbes, and cross-checked against the Hill, the documented breakdown of Trump's current portfolio includes approximately $570 million in unrealized WLFI governance tokens, around $240 million in equity tied to the USD1 stablecoin company, and Reuters analysis estimates over $1 billion in realized cash from WLFI token sales alone. Bloomberg's broader figure puts total Trump family revenue from crypto activity since January 2025 at approximately $1.4 billion. And most interestingly, for context, his net worth was effectively flat across his entire first term. The Trump Memecoin alone generated about $350 million in trading fees within the first 48 hours of launch, captured almost entirely by those two Trump-linked LLCs. Blockchain analysis from Nansen and Chain Analysis identified roughly 45 insider wallets that collectively profited over $1.2 billion, while little over 2 million retail wallets are sitting on cumulative losses estimated at $4.3 billion. And for anyone assuming that this is the natural shape of any token launch, no sir, that assumption completely ignores the structural fact that the issuer in this case also signs the executive orders that determine whether the SEC, the CFTC, or the Treasury investigates the issuer. Which brings us to the single most legally explosive development of the past 3 weeks: Justin Sun. Now, Sun, the founder of Tron, invested approximately $75 million across WLFI tokens and advisory positions starting in November 2024. Within 14 months, on March 5, 2026, the SEC formally moved to settle its long-running 2023 fraud and market manipulation case against Sun and the Tron Foundation. The settlement terms were a $10 million penalty paid by Rainberry Inc., with all charges against Justin Sun personally dismissed with prejudice. No admission of wrongdoing. And of course, the SEC dropping a multi-year fraud investigation against the largest external buyer of the president's own family's crypto token was, we are reliably assured, purely coincidental timing. Right? Then, on April 22nd, Sun filed suit in the Northern District of California, alleging wlfi installed what he calls a backdoor blacklisting function to freeze his roughly 4 billion tokens after he refused to invest an additional $200 million into the USD1 stablecoin. Sun has publicly described wlfi as a personal ATM for the Trump family. 12 days later, on May 4th, wlfi countersued in the 11th Judicial Circuit of Miami-Dade County, alleging defamation, prohibited token transfers, straw purchases, and a coordinated short-selling campaign. Now here's why the legal mechanics matter more than the headlines. The Florida case is a defamation suit, which is the easier one for wlfi to control. The California case, however, is the actual nuclear option, because federal discovery in the Northern District of California would make the internal communications around the SEC settlement, the governance decisions on the blacklist function, and the operational control of the protocol legally accessible to Sun's attorneys. That risk alone is reportedly accelerating exactly the legislative response we're about to discuss. On top of all of this is a parallel investigation that nobody is connecting to the same ecosystem. The Department of Justice and the CFTC are jointly investigating a series of bearish oil futures trades executed across CME and ICE platforms during March and April 2026, and the documented timeline is genuinely extraordinary. A $500 million short placed approximately 15 minutes before Trump's Truth Social post on Iran de-escalation on March 23rd. A $960 million short placed hours before the April 7th ceasefire announcement, a $760 million short placed roughly 20 minutes before Iran's foreign minister announced the Strait of Hormuz reopening on April 17th, a $430 million short placed 15 minutes before Trump extended the ceasefire on April 21st, and a $920 million short placed approximately 70 minutes before the Axios Memorandum of Understanding leak on May 6th. Reportedly netting around $125 million in profit in a matter of hours. Reuters extends the total identified pattern to as much as $7 billion across all instances. Investigators are using the CME's Tag 50 trade identification system to attempt to trace the accounts. And of course, while the agency tasked with investigating this is the CFTC, the same agency's workforce has been cut approximately 24% since Trump returned to office and is currently operating at its smallest headcount in 15 years. Yes, genuinely. Make of that what you will. Now, the legal precedent, however, is already being established. On April 23rd, the DOJ indicted Army Master Sergeant Gannon Van Dyke for using classified information about the capture of Nicolas Maduro to place 13 winning bets at Polymarket, turning approximately $33,000 into $400,000. That's the misappropriation theory of insider trading applied to a prediction market. And the Wall Street Journal's investigation published earlier this month found that 0.1% of Polymarket accounts capture 67% of all profits, with the same Trump family directly invested in Polymarkets via Donald Trump Jr.'s 1789 capital and serving as a paid strategic advisor to Kalshi. The structural question is no longer hypothetical. If a 15-minute lead on a Truth Social post is worth $500 million in oil futures, the same information asymmetry is worth at least as much on a Bitcoin options desk. Which brings us to the legislative collision that is currently freezing the entire industry. The Digital Asset Market Clarity Act passed the House 294 to 134 in July 2025. It is now sitting in Senate Banking Committee markup targeted for the week of May 11th, and the White House wants it signed by July 4th. But Senator Gillibrand stated publicly at Consensus Miami on May 6th, and I'm quoting directly here, "There will be no one voting for this bill if we don't have an ethics provision." The provision she's demanding would explicitly prohibit sitting elected officials and their immediate families from launching, holding, or profiting from token issuances during their term, which would directly prohibit the wlfi and Trump token arrangements as currently structured. Now, the White House counter, articulated by digital assets advisor Patrick Witt, is that they will accept ethics rules applied uniformly across the board, but will reject any provision targeted at specific individuals or positions. Which is to say they will accept ethics rules as long as they are designed to be unenforceable against the specific arrangement they were designed to address. Polymarket odds for Clarity passing in 2026 have moved from earlier highs near 90% down to roughly 60% as of this week. And the ethics fight is now cited as the second largest blocker after the stablecoin yield language that Tillis and also Brooks compromised on May 1st. So if Clarity dies in this window, every other framework this channel has covered, Genius Act implementation, market structure, institutional integration, gets pushed deep into the next presidential cycle. And it doesn't even land on the same legislative deck if Democrats take the House in 2026. This is the part that really matters. The honest truth is that the structural risk to crypto right now is not regulatory hostility. It is a regulatory capture by a single family whose financial incentives are directly entangled with the legislative architecture being written around them. Vanguard reversed its crypto ban on December 2nd, 2025. Morgan Stanley launched MSBT on April 8th with $200 million in assets under management in 3 weeks. BlackRock's IBIT pulled in approximately $721 million in just 3 trading days ending May 7th against a total AUM, assets under management, now sitting at $66.7 billion. All of that institutional capital has moved despite this overhang, not because of it. But the specific perception that legitimizes the capital, the perception that crypto is now a separate asset class governed by neutral rules, is collapsing in real time as Forbes documents one family's net worth tripling through structures the regulators they appoint are not investigating. Barack Obama on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert that aired May 5th framed it without naming names. In his words, the President of the United States shouldn't have a bunch of side hustles that those companies and foreign entities can invest in. He didn't say crypto because he didn't have to. At this point, it's obvious. For you, the practical implications are specific. Position sizing matters more when an entire policy framework rests on one family's evolving legal exposure. Self-custody arguments get structurally stronger when the regulatory framework itself becomes a partisan football. If Cook Political Report's current map of 217 Democratic leading seats versus 202 Republican holds through November, the first crypto-related legislation under a Democratic House will almost certainly be retroactive ethics enforcement, not a ban on crypto, but criminalization of the specific arrangements that define this entire cycle. And that changes the risk calculus for every token currently classified as a digital commodity. So here's where we actually stand. The president's net worth has nearly tripled, with the majority of the delta tied to crypto vehicles his family directly controls. The DOJ is investigating commodity trades that perfectly coincide with his communications. His family's own protocol is now suing the largest investor whose SEC case was settled with prejudice 14 months after he bought the tokens. And the most important crypto bill in American history is being held hostage by ethics provisions specifically designed to prohibit this exact arrangement. The press release tells you the products, the lawsuits and the SEC filings tell you the truth. So here's the final question. Will the Trump's family's exposure ultimately force ethics provisions into the Clarity Act and unlock the bill before the Memorial Day cliff, or will it kill comprehensive market structure legislation entirely and push everything past the 2026 midterms into a fundamentally different political environment? Please get highly opinionated in the comments below, because this absolutely matters for everyone holding crypto. And if you want to understand exactly how the Clarity Act stablecoin yield compromise from Tillis and also Brooks reshapes the legislative path we just discussed, then you should definitely check out our full deep dive on that bill right over here. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you again very soon. This is DC signing